Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a bit of a pragmatic autopsy on the utopian promises of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. For years, we were told these digital structures would replace traditional companies, banks, and maybe even governments. But the reality, well, it's been pretty messy. We're going to uncover exactly why so many of these supposedly infallible organizations spectacularly failed in public and what we can actually learn from their wreckage. Let me hook you right off the bat with a truly staggering statistic. Out of the 10,000 DAOs launched by the year 2024, a massive 90% of them are either completely dead or effectively zombies. They're just sitting there holding locked money, generating absolutely zero revenue, and literally no one is voting. Think about that for a second. We're talking about nearly an entire ecosystem of decentralized innovation just frozen in its tracks. So today's coroner's report is going to systematically examine 5 fatal causes of death: the death of code, hacking votes for cheap, the voter apathy epidemic, how treasuries go broke, and finally, the myth of community. Let's dive right into part 1, the death of code. Back in the early days, the absolute golden rule was code is law, this kind of naive belief that perfect software could just replace messy human governance. Take the very first major DAO, literally just called TheDAO. In April 2016, it raised an absolute fortune, $150 million in mere weeks. No managers, just code. But well, code has bugs. On June 17th, a hacker exploited a re-entrancy bug to siphon off $60 million. And the wild part? The hacker actually argued that because the code allowed it, it was totally legal. To get that money back, the community literally had to vote to rewrite Ethereum's history on July 20th. Crazy, right? And the brutal lesson learned from that very first hack was simple. Code is not law. Law is what the community enforces. When a massive amount of money is on the line, human intervention is always going to override the software. The dream of a purely autonomous, untouchable digital machine, yeah, it pretty much died right there. Moving on to part 2, hacking votes for cheap. You see, attackers quickly realized a fascinating little pivot. Finding bugs in smart contracts is actually super hard, but manipulating a decentralized democracy, surprisingly cheap. Take the Beanstalk protocol heist. The attacker used what's called a flash loan to borrow $1 billion for a split second. With that borrowed money, they bought up 67% of Beanstalk's governance tokens. Then, they immediately voted on a proposal to send the entire treasury to themselves, repaid the loan in the exact same transaction, and just walked away with $182 million. But you know what's truly terrifying about that Beanstalk heist? The number 13. The entire robbery, the borrowing, the voting, passing the proposal, and draining the funds, all of it was executed in just 13 seconds. Because there was no time delay built into the system, a single whale could instantly wipe out the entire protocol. Poof, gone. But hey, it's not always some lightning-fast technical exploit. Take Build Finance. A whale simply bought up enough cheap tokens to gain a voting majority and then leisurely voted to just hand themselves the entire $1 million treasury. The code executed perfectly. Under token-weighted voting, if you buy enough tokens, taking the treasury isn't actually a hack. It's just a perfectly legal feature of a plutocracy. The rich make the rules. Which brings us to part 3, the voter apathy epidemic. So if decentralized voting is so incredibly powerful that it can drain millions, you gotta ask, where is the electorate? Why aren't they stopping these hostile takeovers? Well, the reality is that voter turnout is downright dismal. Even for massive platforms like Uniswap, which sits on a $3 billion treasury, turnout maxes out at around 10%. The best-in-class ENS hits 15%. But the median DAO, it sees a shockingly low 1% participation rate. Quorums are so low that just 10 wallets can often control billions of dollars. This whole situation happens because of a concept known as rational ignorance. Imagine you hold $10,000 worth of a token. Sounds like a lot, right? But in the grand scheme, it gives you a measly 0.001% of the voting power. If reading a dense 20-page governance proposal costs an hour of your time, but only nets you an expected 10 cents in value, well, it makes mathematical sense to just skip the vote entirely. And because of this deep, mathematically logical apathy, the wealth and power distribution in DAOs is shockingly skewed. The Dow Gini coefficient, which is a measure of inequality, sits at 0.9. That matters immensely if you're looking to the blockchain for a fairer financial system. To put that into perspective, these supposedly democratic, community-owned organizations are actually significantly more unequal than wealth distribution in the United States. It's not a democracy, folks. It's an oligarchy. Let's open the books for part 4, how treasuries go broke. hackers and hostile voters aside, most DAOs simply mismanage their money straight into bankruptcy. The great lie of DAO balance sheets is the illiquidity trap. A DAO might boast a $100 million treasury on paper, but that value is almost entirely in their own made-up native token. The very second they try to sell off just 10% of those tokens to pay developers or fund grants, the market panics. The token price plummets by 40%. So that theoretical $100 million actually crumbles to maybe $20 million in real spending power. And if the treasury isn't trapped in an illiquid death spiral or dreamed by a bear market, it might just get stolen from the inside. Without legal entities, professional signers, or background checks, you get situations like the Wonderland DAO. They literally entrusted a $1 billion treasury to an anonymous manager, only to discover way too late that the guy was an actual convicted felon. You can't make this stuff up. Finally, we arrive at Part 5, the myth of community. We hear the word community thrown around constantly in this space, but let's strip away the marketing jargon and look at the messy, deeply human reality of these trustless organizations. The community-owned label, usually a complete myth, governed by a stark power law. Just 1% of the community is truly active. 9% are passive lurkers, and 90% of the people who bought in are just gone. In most DAOs, you literally have about 10 highly stressed people doing 90% of the actual work, while everyone else just waits for the token price to go up. You see, DAOs successfully removed traditional managers, but they definitely did not remove human egos. When a key founder gets burned out and leaves, the token price can plummet 90% because the organization can't quickly hire a replacement. And without an HR department to handle things, every single leadership change, disagreement, or social attack plays out viciously in public governance forums. These public fights trigger massive death spirals, often resulting in code forks that literally tear the treasury and the remaining community right in half.
But here is the ultimate takeaway. All these painful public failures, they weren't for nothing. The DAO hack gave us expensive audits. The beanstalk heist gave us mandatory time locks. Voter apathy gave us professional delegates. They failed fast, and they failed in public, which means the ecosystem is constantly learning. The next wave of decentralized organizations almost certainly won't repeat these exact mistakes. But as they evolve, we have to ask ourselves, what entirely new vulnerabilities are waiting to be discovered next?